Hello, I'm Paul.
I'm Jason.
And together we are
Those Vegan Guys.
And today we're joined by the fabulous Jordan from Vegan Camp Out, who's come along to have a chat about all kinds of things, and you know, alleviate some concerns maybe that some of you have had and have been shared with us over the last few months. We must say from the onset, very important, Jordan, that we came in 2019
yes,
and had the most amazing time. Bawled all the way home. I cried all the way home. I cried all the way home.
I'm just casting my mind back now to the end of Vegan Camp Out 2019, and it was a glorious time had by all. And Paul's absolutely right. We've logged it. There's video evidence of it. We were both shedding tears, and Paul continued to shed tears on the way home.
Do you know what got me on the way home, though, Jordan? More than anything, going past fields full of farm animals, having just been at this place that was like a vegan village for a weekend.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that kind of return to normality is one of the harder effects, but I guess it's also the positive, like you say, of getting to escape for a bit and having that like vegan heaven, vegan paradise type of environment, so it's bittersweet, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. So let's go, if you don't mind, let's go right back to the start. And how did you come up with this, man? What drove you?
Yeah, well, I've always been into music. That's always been my thing. And so I would go to music festivals a lot as a kid, which, I'm kind of learning more and more. So much of our audience has never been to another, what I consider a proper festival, as in you have events. But I think in the music world, a festival kind of, for me, has to tick two boxes of being multiple days and also being camping. Otherwise, to me, it's just an event, which there's such an array of events. But festivals are kind of, and certainly British or European festivals are a very quite specific thing. And so I went to all of them, my whole life. I still do. I went to Boomtown last weekend. And so then when I turned vegan and I was going to the other vegan events, which, some kind of labeled themselves as vegan festivals, which is fine, but like in my world, I was like, oh, this doesn't seem like a festival. It's a great event, but it's not really a festival. And so I kind of put the two together and thought, well, what if I actually started what I consider as a festival, like a music festival format that's multiple days, camping, and rather than people just going to these vegan events and markets, which were great and still are great and certainly were even better, 5-6 years ago, because there wasn't the kind of level of events we have now. At that point, it was like, wow, like vegan burgers and vegan cake. And you would meet people off YouTube or off Facebook, which has become more of a redundant thing. I think now veganism's getting bigger and there's been a more wider array of events. But at that time, that was an amazing thing, but it was still like, I think this could be better, because people went, they bought food, they had a bit of a chat, and then they went home. And I was like, well, if people got to hang out and actually meet new people, this went on for multiple days. There was music, there was parties, there was everything that and camping, of course, everything I love and my friends loved about music festivals. That would just be like the perfect event. But I never actually intended it for it to be this big. It was an idea. We tried it once in 2016, and it wasn't meant actually at that point to be a proper festival. The first ever Vegan Camp Out was like, that wasn't a business name that I thought of, like, oh, what should I call it? It was just a descriptive word for what I was hosting. It was a vegan camp out, and so it wasn't a brand name. It wasn't a registered, copyrighted, whatever. And we started that first one, and kind of like you said, Paul, that was just intended really to be kind of like, to be honest, like a piss up in a field. Like, that's what it was. It was like vegans to come together that had never met each other online. We all kind of debated meat eaters together. We were part of like these vegan groups. And so I was like, okay, let's hire a field. I think we had one food vendor. There was no you know, we had someone with a little sound system, but there wasn't like acts, you know, there wasn't talks, there wasn't stalls people could buy from. And I never at that point intended to do it again. It was just an amazing night. But the day after, like, people were crying as they were leaving, saying that it was the greatest night of their life. And I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was that good. You know, it was like, it was fun. So when people were crying, I then went home and I was like, well, it was at that point, I should have said this in a better order, but it was at that point that I was like, okay, what if I actually turn this into a proper festival? You know, and I was having all these, I was writing down loads of things like, if we hit this and we do this and we can get that, and then eventually I can quit my job and this can become a full-time thing. And there was so much optimism, and, you know, I knew I had the skill set to do it, because I've always put on shows since I was 14. I've managed bands. I managed my own band as a kid. I'd put on shows in my local area. Then I'd book tours for bands when they would tour the UK. So, you know, I knew I had the skill set to do it. And this was like a new movement that I was really involved in and passionate about and starting to learn a lot about. And then, yes, so really from Vegan Camp Out 2017 onwards, that was a proper festival, which has now turned into a proper festival, what I see as a proper festival, you know, with big circus top tents and, you know, obviously we'll get into all of the venue stuff, but that was one of the reasons we were so happy about moving venue for this year, because as good as Newark Showground was, it didn't really feel like a proper festival because half of it was indoors and half of it was outdoors. There wasn't that much greenery and kind of outdoorsiness. So this year's festival, I know obviously you guys weren't there, but it really was kind of like that final piece of actually creating a festival. And everyone that came, or most people that came, like if people had just came and said that it was just as good as the others, I would have been like, okay, that's great. But like, given that all my group and then extended group and people that were coming up to me over the weekend and feedback we've had in emails and stuff, I've seen so many comments say that that was by far the best one yet. So it's like, even though I wasn't trying to achieve that necessarily, we just wanted it to be as good as previous years had been, with all the challenges we had this year from yes, the backlash, but also just the industry at the moment and people's financial situations and recession and, you know, still COVID problems and all of these things mixed together, and moving to a new venue where we had to build everything ourselves. Just for it to happen and be successful was like the goal. But the fact so many people thought it was the best one yet was like amazing.
I've got a random question to throw in here from one of our subscribers. It came up last night on a live stream. Is there a new Vegan Camp Out? Is it linked with you, the one that started in Australia? Yeah,
it is linked with us. It's not going to be ran by us or by me, but like there's an affiliation there, and
it's under the brand.
Yeah, and there's going to be other Vegan Camp Outs started around the world, starting from, there's actually going to be an Argentina one this year in November, but then next year, that's probably when Australia and America and potentially a few other locations are going to start. So yeah, that's really exciting as well.
Just please don't do a RuPaul, Jordan.
What's that? RuPaul, well, I know what RuPaul is, but
RuPaul has too many series of Drag Race all over the world, and then All Stars and everything, and everyone's like, it's too much. I'm joking. We just let our daughter in. Our fur baby is scratching at the back door, so we have to let her in. Come on in, child, we're talking. Such is the life of a fur mother. There we go. So I mean, obviously it's now huge.
Yeah.
And you say that you never expected it to get this big. How do you feel now that it has got this big?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been a lot of work. Again, all of these things will tie back to other things we'll speak about, but like obviously the negatives of the spotlight you're under, and more than anything, just a numbers game, right? Like if I don't know, if 10% of your audience, it's probably higher than this, but if 10% of your audience become unhappy with you, they don't want to, you know, they don't want to carry on supporting, they're essentially dropouts from your audience. But then let's say 1% of that 10% are people who are really gonna, you know, make up accusations about you, you know, now what we know is cancel culture and all of this, then the more people you're dealing with, that stuff's just going to be bigger, you know. And so there was always the second I started Vegan Camp Out, there was people who didn't like the event, didn't like what we were trying to do, started then attacking me. But it was such a manageable level that it was like, okay, you can like the amount of comments you can count on one hand are still way outnumbered by the hundreds of comments, right? So like, even though they would still get to you, it's very manageable. So the negative side of like something growing so much is just that sheer number of averages becomes a lot higher when you're dealing with like tens of thousands of people, you know. And it's not just like it's tens of thousands of people that come to Vegan Camp Out. Let's say even just a tenth of the vegan audience in the UK knows about Vegan Camp Out, or they follow us, or they have a friend who comes. That's still like 100,000 people then, right? Like at 10%. So the negativities of anything get much bigger when your event gets bigger. But at the same time, of course, all the positives do. And for as much as I could rant, I'm going to do my first talk next year about Vegan Camp Out and about like cancel culture more on the whole, and kind of some of the things that have happened to me, some of the things that have happened to the event. But I was going to say, for everything, I can rant about that because it is very close to my heart, not just because of what's happened to me, but because, you know, like free speech and being reasonable and being kind to people and not wanting to ruin people's lives is something that's very, very important to me. But my point is, for everything I can say about that, the list of all the achievements and all the things that I never thought I would do, like having some of my favorite bands perform at Vegan Camp Out, and, you know, Russell Brand just in itself is someone I've loved since like 2008, who I never would have dreamed I would have a festival, never mind a festival that would have Russell Brand perform at the event. So that list of all the positivities and the achievements and the, you know, the life ticks goals
is weighs the bad.
Yeah, exactly. And so it really is a mix of the both. I never like to speak about one without speaking about the other, because it's definitely not like, even though I've only had a taste of what people who, you know, are like really, what's the word, kind of notable in society, like, you know, I've only had a taste of what they must put up with. But yeah, it's definitely not as simple as just like, yeah, work really hard and, you know, achieve all these things and, you know, or make this money, you know, if like that's the reason you're doing business, which it's certainly not my only reason. But we definitely have to speak about all the negatives that come with that, especially when we can create that change, like the actions that we make, the things that we say, the things we post, and allowing other people to act in certain ways. I'm not saying that makes us as responsible. I think people try and claim that, and I don't think that's fair, but I think we're at least somewhat responsible to those who we associate with, those who, what we condone, what we see, what we call out. And so, yeah, as good as all the positives are, I really like to talk about the dangers of cancel culture and yeah, just on the whole, but from an achievement point of view and a business point of view, there's a whole other array of like issues that come with just having a big business. And especially when it's in a community, as you guys know, you know, it's a very divided community at times. At least there's a lot of fallout. I would say, you know, I'm not as involved in any other communities. I've certainly always been involved in music communities, and, you know, it doesn't even compare the level of division that we have in the vegan community to what I ever saw in any of the music communities I was involved with. And we can make a difference by the way we kind of conduct ourselves with that, and, you know, lead by example.
Absolutely. In fact, because as you know, I've been quite critical of some things about Vegan Camp Out, and some of that has been reflecting what we've been seeing not in broader communities, just in ours. And ours are quite small, really. But I did think it was important to reflect that. However, on one of our live streams a good few weeks ago, I did actually make a point of saying, I don't get now everyone that's angry with Vegan Camp Out because of the venue it's on at the moment. How can you be angry with Camp Out as an organisation, but not be angry with all the stars, celebs, the people you admire that are happily going along to that event? Because I didn't get it. I was like, well, you can't be angry with the organisation for where it's holding this, but then say, oh, but I still love Van Ged, for example, and he's going because it didn't make any sense.
Well, in all fairness, the people that have attacked us have tried to, you know, garner attention through all of the speakers, the food vendors, the sponsors, and you see them post, like, there's kind of, again, two camps. There's people that say, well, if all of the speakers and all of the sponsors and all of the food vendors, along with the organization, are okay with this decision, then clearly they've looked into this, they've weighed up the options, they understand the benefits here. But then there's the other half that have joined the, well, if I don't like Vegan Camp Out for their decision, and all these speakers are involved and these animal rights charities are involved and they don't have an issue, then I won't swear because I don't know how your censorship works, but basically, you know...
you can swear, by the way.
Okay, well then, yeah, like, fuck all of them as well. Do you know what I mean? So actually, there has been that discussion that I've seen, and I appreciate the people who are saying, maybe we don't know everything about this, and the people who are involved are probably the people who understand it, but unfortunately to the diehards, and they're the people that are in that 1% that I spoke about, they will say, well, you know, screw all of these people and organizations as well. And they narrow veganism down. And they don't just do this with Vegan Camp Out. They do it all the time with every issue. They say, unfriend me now if you don't agree with this. Unfriend me now if you don't agree with this vegan opinion. Like, you were never vegan. You were just plant-based. And they narrow it down so it's just them and their few friends on Facebook that agree with them. And that's what you do when you start to say, well, all these speakers aren't vegan either, and all these charities aren't vegan either. It's like, they've said more, done more, raised more than you, sat on Facebook, will ever do in your lives. And here you are trying to tell them that they're not vegan anymore because they've made a decision that you don't agree with. And not only is that such a bad mindset to have, but it's so counterproductive to the movement, because it's essentially like the no Scotsman fallacy of like saying that everyone else but you is like the true definition of that, of that word. And the no Scotsman fallacy is that they can do that to you as well. I could be saying, well, if you don't agree with my decision, because I could make an argument of being at Stanford Hall is a better decision for, I'm not actually making this argument. I could, there are reasons why I'm always
talk about that, hopefully.
Yeah. But I'm always like a pros over negatives type of person. But my point is, I could also make the argument back to these people and say, well, actually, it's a better animal decision to have made the decisions we've made, and therefore I'm saying that you're not vegan. But I would never dream of doing that, because it's not about who's vegan, who's not. I'm a better vegan than you are. It's about trying to create change for animals, but at the same time, as best as we can, trying to get along and be a united community. Because if we don't do that, then we won't create change. The most successful communities in life are those that had the best leadership, the best, you know, unity, the best, you know what I'm trying to say. And a divided movement doesn't do that very well. So
Slightly on topic, I was just going to say, we were talking a few minutes for a couple of minutes before we started today with you, Jordan, and one of the things I was saying to Paul was, it's quite difficult, I think, for anybody to fully appreciate or even begin to understand the complexities of putting something on like Vegan Camp Out if they've never been involved. And I was saying to Paul, I wonder what parallels we can possibly draw as YouTube content creators. What are the parallels? What are the similarities? And the only thing that I could really come up with was, in our world as content creators for YouTube, and I think in your world as somebody who puts on Vegan Camp Out, you can't please all of the people all of the time, can you? But I think your point is really valid in that actually the infighting within the community can be incredibly damaging, whether it's the 1% or the 5%.
Well, we deal with that ourselves on a quite small scale on our channel, in our group on Facebook, because you'll get somebody that posts something they bought in a supermarket, and then someone else will say, you could make that yourself from scratch, it's really easy. And we always say, if they wanted to do that, they would have asked for information on that. They're eating vegan. Shh. You know what I mean?
You sometimes say it, don't you? How does this help?
Who does this
help?
How does this help, and who does this help? So let's talk about the venues, Jordan, because there was We had no idea where we were going in 2019, and I don't think I would have really focused on it or really paid attention to it. I knew that I was coming to Vegan Camp Out for the first time. I couldn't wait to get there. I had an amazing time. I left crying. That's the end of the story. But there was actually controversy about that venue as well, but not quite as much as there has been about this new venue. And it seemed to really kind of gain some footing this year. And a lot of people were talking about it. So the simplest question is, why that venue?
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking of things as you were saying things, but let's go through each question by itself. Okay, why that venue? Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, it's hard to start this subject just without, so you're, you may not know, but I think you probably do, but there's going to be many people watching this who may not know. So just to kind of start with the first statement of, there isn't a such thing as a vegan festival venue in the UK. So that's very, very, very clear to get out, because that changes the whole thing of like, well, why have you been there when they do this to animals? It's a much different question if, why didn't you go there when there's this venue that's completely vegan, as opposed to why did you go there over the other venues that also, harm animals in some way? So I just wanted to make that clear so that your audience knows. So based on that, given that there are no such thing as large scale vegan venues, we have to obviously weigh up all of the options as to where we go. Now, even in 2018, when it was our second year, but even then you could kind of call 2018 as the first proper festival. Like 2017 was like the start to that, which was starting to kind of mold. But then the start of our 3-year contract with Newark Showground really was like a new birth to Vegan Camp Out. We went from 2,000 to almost 6,000 people. The caliber of the acts we were getting was much bigger. So, that was the start. And quite honestly, obviously our research into places, our due diligence that we took, the backlash against us was much less at that time. And so you don't scour every venue, in the country to the same degree. It's okay, there's all this buzz about us. We want to be at a new venue. Obviously we wanted to try and be at the best venue we could, but even the best venue, there's so many things that have to tick. This is the other thing that people say of, why don't you be there at a sanctuary? Or I know a guy who has acres in his back garden. Why don't you go there? Like the list of health and safety, road permits, council permits, licensing, alcohol, music, animals on site, space, cost, like the list is incredible.
Toilets, right? Water, security.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously in 2018, like we actually do way more due diligence now. Now we're bigger. Now there's more eyes on us. Yes, because of the backlash as well, though that's only actually a small part. But in 2018, it was more just like, okay, let's find somewhere we can be at. So we did still go to I probably went to a good 15 venues, and obviously ethics of that venue or what that venue might do or what they might host was still one of them points. Now, they were all pretty equal in the sense of either they were owned by some kind of farmer or they were, part of the money went back into agriculture, or, again, at that point, we still found venues that held hunts and shoots, but it wasn't so much not necessarily an ethical reason as to why we said no to them. It was much more that we physically couldn't cost it or afford it, or they didn't want to have an event, because so many venues do not want to host Vegan Camp Out because they will get so much flack from their friends, farming communities, agricultural communities, not so much even the council. Like, we're not a high risk festival. We're actually a very low risk festival, but the pure nature of Vegan Camp Out, like even if we were called Vegan Food Festival, there would still be backlash. But the fact that they know that activism is a part of our event, it was originally a very big part of the core, still is a fundamental part of what we do. It comes with a whole array of issues that almost no other festival in the UK would have to deal with, unless, I don't know, there was a festival for racists or something, then obviously, that would get the same kind of thing. But talking in normal kind of social groups, or again interest groups, like the vegan thing back to the label that veganism has is much harder, of course. And so it was always, once we kind of did our things, then there was only ever a few venues that would actually have us. So then out of them, it was, okay, we just need to now find a festival that can hold it in the summer, can hold it for the length we need, has a license, or we can get a license that will allow us to have these activities. And of course wants to host, and of course we can afford. And so again, even at that point, it wasn't like we had loads of different offers on the table. Even though we, like I said, I want to make clear that I didn't go out and probably search for as many venues as I now would, because it was different back in 2018. Again, I still never knew that Vegan Camp Out would become, a 10 to 15,000 person event. It was like we were still, a 2,500 person event from the year before at that time. So it just became that Newark was our kind of like one of our only options, really, or like I say, too expensive, or they didn't want to host us, or they had hunting and shooting and all the rest. But we were obviously annoyed that the money did go back into agriculture from what we paid. But again, we knew we had looked. We'd learned a bit about how venues in the UK work. None of them were vegan venues. We knew that back in 2018. And more than anything, we needed a site that already had a license, because that would have made our job, again, with the knowledge that we would have. If we needed someone else on board, that would have been more money. And we were already taking out so many loans and, risks to make this work. So we needed a safe bet. And Newark was like on paper, like tick, 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 because that's why Showgrounds are amazing for festivals, because they already have all of the licenses needed, and they already have 50% of your infrastructure already there, buildings for talks, shower blocks for showers, toilet blocks for toilets, roads, electric, like they literally have some of the biggest kinds that you need, So whilst we were like, oh, that's a shame that the money goes into agriculture, with what it was offering was kind of our only option that we had to kind of take this risk when we took it. And we knew that that was a negative, but again, the benefits outweighed them. But we did look into it, and we looked and we basically found out that the majority, I think it was actually all, but I think it was only checked for like the previous 3 years, but they came back to us and said that basically all of the grants that we can find over the last 3 years from the money that Newark Showground has raised have gone into like plant farming, so like potato farming and things like that. So like if it all come back that, oh yeah, all this money is, all going into beef farming and pig farming, then either we would have still done it, but it would have been this is annoying, or we would have, paused the event and looked harder. I don't know what I would have done 4 years ago. It's a very different mindset. But because all of the grants that came back had gone into plant farming, I was like, okay, well, I don't even have to have it on my conscience of like, oh, there's all this vast amount of money that we're paying them. Our amount wasn't vast, but all of the events that they host is going into directly funding, beef farming or chicken farming. So it actually wasn't that much of like an ethical thing for me. We still knew they were owned by an agricultural society, but as you know, agriculture just means food and farming. Essentially, they weren't an animal agricultural society. They were just an agricultural society, which through our due diligence we saw that it was funding plant farming. So that was basically the issue with Newark Showground. There wasn't that much backlash, and we had it on our website that it is owned by an agricultural society, but there isn't a such thing as a vegan venue. All of our money that we're spending all of the time somehow funnels, bits, not even speaking about taxes, because that's unavoidable, but the things we choose to buy, the banks that we're with, the kind of things even they do. Do you know what I mean? Like vegans are now leaving their banks to go with like much smaller banks because of a lot of stuff like the banks have been involved with, or animal testing or hunting. So that there's just so much to it, and you can obviously only control what you do. And Vegan Camp Out was always a vegan festival, ran by vegans, predominantly for vegans, the food, the speakers, the entertainment, all vegan. But there was a little bit of backlash, and people would say to us, yeah, but it's still owned by an agricultural society. And we said, yes, we know this. And obviously we would want to change this in a perfect world. And even then we were telling people that the three main kinds of festival venues in the UK are Farmland, which is the majority of music festivals. Obviously they move all of the animals to have the festival, but you are directly hiring that land off of farmers, And most of them are animal farmers, because that's why festivals don't really happen on crop production, because it wouldn't work. Do you know what I mean? Because all the crops would be out, you know. So dairy farmers, you know, beef farmers, pig farmers, they move the animals, they have the festivals, people go to all their music festivals. Even I go to them, everyone I know goes to them, even though you know 100% your money is directly going into the pockets of farmers, you know. But we still, obviously maybe not you guys, but like everyone I know still goes to these festivals despite that. And, you know, throughout all of this, people have been like, oh, it's kind of like the Glastonbury thing. Like, no, like that just became popularized, that Glastonbury is a dairy farm. Like many festivals are farmland, like a hell of a lot more. It's not just Glastonbury. So that's number one. Second most popular venue for festivals are showgrounds, which we've already discussed, which are really, really great venues for events because they already have everything built. But the negative is that they are owned by agricultural societies. So you know for a fact your money is funding agriculture, but whether it's funding both or it's funding only animal agriculture or only plant, that's what you've got to kind of look into, right? But we didn't want to go to another showground because we'd already had backlash for being at a showground. So we didn't want to say, hey guys, we're leaving Newark Showground and now we're going to Peterborough Showground, because people have said, but that's the reason we were giving you backlash to begin with, right? And so the other third kind of venue, which is what we're at now, and in my eyes is by far the best out of the three options and the most neutral option, is estates, stately homes and big, you know, estate halls. Now, the kind of people that own them halls might be involved in their personal life, you know, in hunting or shooting. In the same way, in all three of these scenarios, the people that own these venues are probably not vegan, you know, so you can make the argument that your money is going towards them buying meat, dairy and eggs all day. So it's not about the people really that own them, it's where that money is going to and what that money is going to be used to do, because we accept that none of the people that own these venues are going to be vegan. Maybe their wife or their girlfriend or something is vegetarian, you know, we've found that before, but the owners generally aren't vegan. And so with stately homes or estates, they're a completely neutral sense, because in the farmland, it's farmers that own that land and the money is going into their pocket. With showgrounds, they're owned by agricultural societies and the money is going into agriculture. But with estates, that money is just used for the upkeep of the home. So it's essentially a completely neutral proposition. Now, in all three scenarios, they rent their land out for non-vegan activities. That isn't something that's, again, because if they didn't, by definition, they'd be a vegan venue, which, you know, doesn't exist. And so all three rent their land out for non-vegan activities, whether that's shooting, hunting, fishing, horse riding. You know, obviously there's a scale of what you can see is really bad, you know, kind of bad, you know, it's a sliding scale of course of all the things that can happen, but they're all rented out for non-vegan activities. It's hard to find a venue that will even take on a festival like ours. Imagine trying to find a venue that would take on our festival and also cancel all of the non-vegan events. They would want about £5 million for rent. You know what I mean? So like, that's just not a plausible situation. And so whilst we knew that all stately homes and estates rented their land out for things like hunting or shooting, we went and visited about 50. And again, it was still that, which ones can we afford? Which ones have availability? Which ones want us? Because we found more than any other venue period in our history as a business, we would get right through to signing a contract with a venue. And then they would call us and say, we've just spoken to like the top director. Like usually it's their job to decide what events go on. But because it was a vegan event, they would call up the highest people and be like, I just want to check before I sign this event that you're okay with this happening. And literally about 10 times we had it where we went through right to the final stage. And then they decided, no, sorry, like it's just too controversial. Like, you know, we don't want to get all that flack, you know. And again, if they'd Googled us, they would have seen we'd had flack already at Newark Showground. And so understandably, they didn't want to take that on. So finding a venue for this year's event and for the next few years that would actually have us was incredibly difficult. And then out of the ones that would have us, those that actually had availability, we could afford, and also weren't just a full-blown dairy farm. They were selling beef on the side. They were doing shoots and hunts themselves, you know, so that would have just been past the line of what we could have, you know, been morally permissible and, you know, being able to maintain from backlash and all the rest. Stanford Hall was just the perfect option. And given that we'd already had feedback from people saying, yes, we agree with you, that a stately home or an estate is the best scenario, because that money isn't directly going to go into the hands of agriculture. Instead, the venue is like in the middle, but vegan camp out pay the venue, shooters and hunters pay the venue, weddings pay the venue, music festivals pay the venue, you know, so everyone's paying the venue. And so our money and our presence there is in no way funding, promoting, expanding the activities of someone else that rents the venue for their activities. Obviously, it's a shame that them things still happen at the venue. But like I say, we didn't find a single estate that didn't allow hunting or shooting to happen. But, and this goes on to one of the things I wrote down, Paul, that we spoke about. But they did make the decision, because shooting and hunting are different in the sense of, like, hunting is, you know, traditionally about fox hunting. Shooting is more kind of, you know, like pheasant shooting and stuff like that. And the two groups, whilst there is some overlay, are very separate groups. We learnt this by speaking to vegans that, like, knew kind of, you know, how the countryside things work, and hunt sabs and people like that. And so they are separate, even though they're both, you know, we're against both of them. But whilst they couldn't stop shooters from hiring the land purely because of the insane amount of money that these, like, estates get for using their land for doing that, and on the contrast, they get very little or no money for allowing their land for fox hunters to come on and use, they could make that decision of, okay, even though it's going to get us a lot of backlash, and they did, and I really support and appreciate that they did that, either for us or, you know, their own views, which, you know, I can never speak about someone else's views, but the fact they made that decision, knowing that they would get flack for it, was like, wow, like, we were already going to sign with them. But the fact that they've made this extra step to now not allow fox hunters to ever use their land, or at least I presume whilst we're there, obviously I can't speak about, you know, in 10 years time if we're not at that venue, but that's like an added bonus, you know, that's something
that's huge.
Like, yeah,
that's huge. That's
so that's the why. But you
ask me a question about that, because this was something that came up quite a lot with people as well. Why didn't you lead? Like, why did it take a lot of controversy for that story to come out about the kind of banishing of the fox hunting? Because that's a leading story. That's like that's a huge selling point. I would have thought, and a lot of people said that it felt like a no comment. Like, yeah, you're all moaning about the venue. Well, no.
Yeah.
You know, so it's was that fact established kind of later on, or did you just not think to lead with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. Yeah. There's actually quite a lot here, because it's like, I think that decision by the venue came slightly after we'd announced what the venue was anyway, and so not a huge gap. It could have been a week, but it wasn't. I don't think it was something straight away that we would have included in the announcement. But the bigger thing is here, like, you know, and we're allowed to disagree. I don't necessarily, whilst I can see the argument that, yeah, that's a cool thing to include, given that there wasn't backlash, and given that when you're on the defense, you use things that actually strengthen your argument, and we all go into defensive mode. Not that and we'll speak about that as well, but not that I think our statement was a particularly defensive statement. Obviously, it was in our defense, but I don't think it was written in a defensive way. But when you are being attacked, you do use defenses more, right? Things that can strengthen your argument. But at that point, we were just announcing who the new venue was. So, like, in the same way we didn't announce Newark Showground with a, hey guys, we're going to be at Newark Showground, but just to let you know, it's owned by an agricultural society, and they have hosted, you know, horse events in the past, because it's like, that's only going to, by your very start, cause division. Do you know what I mean? It's like if someone asks you about that, if then you lie, then that's misleading people. But it's not necessarily transparent to just open with all the negatives about something. So in the same way, we didn't necessarily see it all that fit when we were announcing our new venue, because it was just so people knew where it was going to be. Obviously, we knew we'd done our due diligence. So if there was any backlash, we knew what we'd done, we knew what was allowed at the venue, we knew what had been banned from the venue, but it wasn't an announcement about like the ethics of a venue, if you know what I mean. It was just about, this is where we're going to be and this is the date, more than anything the date, because a lot of people had already bought tickets. And so that's why there was even more of a rush. And, you know, we were literally driving every day for so many hours, going to so many venues, even in the final 3-week period before our announcement. And so we knew it was a great thing. But like I say, I think it was actually a week after we'd announced anyway. So, but once they did announce that to us, we knew that was a great thing. And we knew that we would say that if people asked. But to us, it wasn't necessarily like an announcement. And like a few reasons why that could be is, I don't know, for example, we knew we were already going to sign with that venue. And therefore, it's a benefit that they had banned fox hunters from using their land, but it wasn't the reason we signed for them. So imagine we'd announced, oh my God, and they've done this. If 6 months later they changed that decision, then that would have come really down hard on us. So like, it's not necessarily about like releasing every little bit of info in the past. And to that point, not necessarily that you're saying like, no, you definitely should have, but to someone that might say that, well, no other vegan event in the country, when they announce where the event is going to be, because we've looked like when, and obviously we'll get into the backlash of this year, but when all this happened, we looked like, not only did we look into all the venues that other vegan events were hosted at, which all in some way promote, fund animal exploitation, but we looked at their posts and not only were they never attacked by these people, but they also never did any kind of post of like, just to let you know, guys, we're at this venue, but this venue does host rib events, or it does, you know, do this, or it's hosted farmers markets, or any of this. Because in my opinion, and I agree with them, that's not really people's business. Like, that's business of the venue, right? If you want to take it up with the venue, you want to look at the venue's website, what do they host? And if you aren't happy what the venue hosts, message the venue, you know, be like, these events are bad, because don't attack the vegan event for being there, because that's what we need more of. We need more vegan events in venues to make change. And so it's so counterproductive to like come down hard on the vegan event for what the venue that vegan event happens to be at also hosts as events. And that's why all the attacks on us kind of hit every angle of just inconsistency. So, you know, they didn't do this to other vegan events that are all mostly, any large one anyway, is absolutely held at venues that some profit enormously from, you know, the sale of meat, dairy and eggs, or farmers markets, or, you know, leather shows, or whatever it is. But they never came down on hard on them. So it was an inconsistency thing. And it was just an uneducated thing, in the sense of we knew the strengths and the lengths that we'd gone to pick a venue. But there was a third point. I've completely forgot it. I'll let you speak now.
Well, the good thing, no, I think you've actually...
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, and sorry, it hits the cancel culture thing bit, because even if you are unhappy, which I know you guys are very big on as well, but even if you are unhappy, it's about how you convey that unhappiness. You know,
absolutely.
You don't make false claims about people. You don't make memes of their face. You know, you don't.
No.
So it hit every angle for me of untruth, inconsistencies, but also just really an awful and inhumane way to go about the situation.
It's like social media attacks these days can go way too far. Talking about your gripes is enough.
Yeah,
that's enough, and that's a good way of. And I think actually, Jordan, what you've just done throughout this conversation, don't worry, I'm not leading to an end here, not yet, is made it very clear that there is far more that's gone into all of this than possibly most people are aware of, unless they themselves are organisers of big events, the fact that you've had to troll so many venues, and just the simple fact that there isn't a vegan venue, full stop. There isn't one.
I think
so having to kind of find the best of a venue, and I think that's really going to help people to understand the journey that you've been on throughout all of this. How old are you now, Jordan?
I know I look about 23, but I'm 30.
But still, 30, you're an extremely young man, and you've created one of the biggest vegan festivals in the world. So, but I think all of the stuff you've just spoken about, all of the drive into the different venues, and you know, seeing 10 of them in 1 week, and having to make your mind up about like which is the best one, is going to help people.
I would echo that, Jordan, to just say I was listening intently to everything, the way that you was describing it so succinctly, the clarity and the understanding around all of this stuff that you've just been talking about is so important. And thank you for sharing it in such detail, because I think it really does help in a very short space of time to paint a picture as to how your values align with everything that you do in life, not just Vegan Camp Out, but it's really nice to get that picture. Thank you.
I kept wanting to say while Jordan was speaking before, it's like a lot of people forget, it's because they'll say, oh, but you're funding animal agriculture. Do you go to Tesco, Sally? Do you know what I mean? We all go
and I know there's some people that say like, oh, but you have to eat, but then even that's split into two things, because one, you don't like, even if we say, okay, supermarkets, I presume most of us go to non-vegan restaurants as well, and you can absolutely only go to vegan restaurants. Like that is not a life or death situation. So most of the people who are attacking us absolutely go to non-vegan restaurants for vegan food, knowing full well that the millions of animals, let's even just take like, you know, actually I never know what names you can say, but you know, two of the biggest chains in this country that vegans love to go to, and I'm not on about the big fast food chains like McDonald's and Burger King. I mean like nice, you go with your family, you sit in type places and have extensive vegan menus now. Both of them chains alone are responsible for the death and abuse of tens of millions of animals, right? When we know that we can go to a vegan restaurant in probably any city other than going to them, but we choose to go there and we're like, yeah, we know this, but you know, we want to support them options. And at the same time, we're also selfish. You know, we want to go and try these like new products that we know have a lot of funding behind them. So maybe sometimes they're going to be a bit tastier or a bit more like futuristic than some of the, you know, low level vegan restaurants. As great as they are, there's no denying that those with money are going to sometimes be able to do a better job, I think definitely when food is concerned. But people go to them knowing that. And even though the argument that can be made that them chains aren't really doing that much for veganism, obviously they've spotted there's a big plant-based revolution happening. We should get some of these options on our menu, make some money, and yeah, there are going to be meat eaters that try them products. It's unlikely they're going to go vegan just after having that product, but definitely it's a small stepping stone. My point is they're not like openly pushing for veganism. And so if them chains aren't being attacked that are run by non-vegans and are responsible for the death and abuse of tens of millions of animals, and yet the majority of vegans still go to them when they could go to a fully vegan restaurant, it's crazy to me that Vegan Camp Out gets attacked, because the negatives are not even close to that of them big chains, and the benefits are incredibly higher. This isn't just, oh, we happen to have some vegan options at Vegan Camp Out. The whole event is vegan, you know, the whole team is vegan, and such a big core value of the whole event is to promote and push veganism, you know. And so the fact that we have been attacked over this not even more than like close to, we're the only one that have had this argument thrown at us in this way. No other vegan event has gone through it, although despite us all being in the exact same boat. And like I say, none of these chains that these vegans go to have also been attacked in this way. Like, don't get me wrong, there's the odd comment like, oh, if you go to this restaurant, you're not a vegan, but not to the same degree of like hundreds of people getting involved and memes posted about the people that go to these restaurants. Like, people, again, they just like, okay, we're not going to agree, move on to the next issue. But unfortunately, people do like to attack their own sometimes more than the actual enemy. Not that I'm saying there necessarily is, I don't like to frame things in terms of enemies, but like, you know, the goal that we're united to try and get as close to as we can. There's been more attack against us in this than there was against them industries in that period that we were being attacked. And so to make that decision of that's where your efforts and your energy and your time and your energy is going to go, is like, because like you said, Paul, it's like, what does this achieve, right? It's like, we're still going to be at this venue, nor do we even have an option to go to another venue. And so just attacking us not only attacks Vegan Camp Out, might put some people off by going, it attacks the businesses, the charities who are involved with the event, and nothing changes for animals. So like, that's why it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, I get you. I get you.
And someone actually made the argument of, just one last, someone actually made the argument of, given that the only reason estates allow, or should I say continue, obviously back in the day it would have been a historical thing, but given with everything we know about animals now, and people are starting to get a bit more on board with the vegan stuff, the main reason that these estates still allow these shoots to happen is because of the vast amount of money that they get, as I said earlier. And so the argument to be made is actually, by us being there, takes up a chunk of that money.
You're stopping it from happening at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And so without us being there, they're going to need that extra funding, and therefore they're going to continue the shooting to happen, as opposed to like, maybe we can actually stop it now, or worse, actually have more of them kind of activities to be able to get that funding. But the more vegan or just neutral events, like, you know, a wedding or a sporting event or a festival, the more non-animal abuse events that happen, that is actually how you stop, from a funding point of view, at these venues. That's how you can give them the funding that they need to no longer have shoots there. And so for everyone saying if they can't be at a vegan event, they shouldn't exist at all, not only is that a standard that they don't hold against anyone else, but in my opinion, it's actually a counterproductive argument for animals, because if we didn't exist, them activities would still happen at that venue, and if and possible, more activities would happen by us not being there. But by us being there, we take up some of that funding and promote veganism massively. And that's the stuff you guys, I know, already agree with. You know, the thousands of people that come who are not vegan yet, or they're just vegan but they want to get involved in activism. You know, there's no other event in them numbers that can do that as we do, and yet we're attacked by the kind of more extreme elements of the activist group, the very thing that our event kind of pushes for, just purely because of the numbers we can get. I'm not saying there's events that are purely dedicated to activism, but I'm talking from a outcomes kind of thing, the numbers we get. There isn't another event in the country that can promote activism to 10 or 15,000 people. It just doesn't exist. And that's why it was so upsetting to see the very people who obviously love that kind of stuff trying to literally shut us down, you know. And so that's what made it harder, basically.
Can I ask you something about something you've said a couple of times, and I haven't seen anything personally, but have people made memes?
Yeah, like
with your picture?
Yeah, I've probably got 15 now saved on my laptop that I've given to the police. The level
like that.
The level to which this stuff goes, and I know I wrote down in my notes, I didn't say it at the start, but I know full well that you guys are not part of this problem. You don't support people that do this, even if you disagreed with me 100%, which I know you don't. But even if you did, you still wouldn't be encouraging people to act in this behavior. So, you know, I just want to make clear, I understand the distinction, even if there's been things you've said, even if there's been actions we've made that you're not happy with, which I'm really glad we're having this chat and going through them. But that's vastly different to, like I say, that 1% of the 10% who are really unhappy. Then people are, you know, just a different breed in the sense of they wake up every day, and like some of these people were posting 15 to 20 posts about us a day, and to have that much time to want to try and ruin someone's life and make up false accusations. People were taking photos of my shoes and being like, we found these shoes on Puma, I can prove that they're not vegan. And it was like, well, hold on, for one, you don't know when that photo could have been or how old the shoes were, but two, this is the link, they're literally vegan shoes. So like the level that people go to try and like trip you up again wasn't leveled at any other vegan who had an event or had an organization or whatnot. So there's always a small group of people, and I always say to people that even though they're a small group, it's that bigger group who are being influenced by them people. And so even though it might seem like a small thing for you to just share a status, who's posting that status? Have you fact checked what that status says? And do you even need to share this? Like, is it actually really important that your followers know this? Or could you message in that person directly to be like, okay, this has happened. I'm not too happy with it. Can we have a chat about it? Now, after you've had a chat, I don't agree with it myself because I'm very against this kind of stuff. But after you've had a chat, if you still feel that they're doing something that's so bad that you want to share that post to alert your followers, okay, at least you've kind of done, you know, you've done the research. But people aimlessly share things and then they move on to something else. But the comments within these shares are, you know, fucking scum, you know, blah, blah, blah. This meme, I hate these people, go fuck yourself, go die, wanker, you know, like every, you know, and there was hundreds of them, like hundreds and hundreds of them. And that's the only reason we put out a statement, because I'm very big in do not feed the trolls if you don't need to, right? And so like, it's like anyone who's involved in PR or that kind of thing will tell you, like, never always justify yourself. Like, oh, if you've seen something that's been said, hey guys, actually this isn't true, blah, 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 because it, you know, like it promotes some ideas. It makes you look defensive. It's also just bad for your mental health, right? And it's like, and also, like I said, you're feeding them. So then it's like, wow, if they're replying to every comment, they clearly care. So like, we're getting to them, right? Let's post more. But it was only when it got to a level of, you know, 100 plus people all posting about this multiple times a day, that then we said, okay, now we've got to do a post. And I know you, Paul, thought that post was like, you know, you said a few times in the video of like, no, and that's fine. Like, that really is okay for like, I'm such a big person on, like, it's your right to like think whatever you want. You know what I mean? So like, if that's the way you took it, like, that's fine. I didn't see too many other people saying that. Like, what I saw is we were being viciously attacked, and then those that weren't attacking us were still like, oh, I don't know how to feel now, which was probably kind of where you felt. And so we put out the statement. I thought it was quite well wrote. Like, I did it pretty quickly, to be fair, because it's like, I need to get this out today. Like, this is getting out of hand now. And so that's why I go through the different things of like, well, there isn't a vegan venue, that's to start. Then it goes through the level of, obviously we can speak about this in further detail on a call like this. You only have so many words without it being a super long essay in a post.
Absolutely. And like you said, it is a vegan venue. When you break it down, the organisers are vegan. Almost everyone who attends is vegan or on the way to becoming vegan. All the vendors, all the speakers, So it's a vegan event.
And I wanted to make it super clear, and it wasn't throwing other events under the bus at all, and no event has thought we were doing that, so that's good. But I wanted to make clear, like, this isn't a vegan camp out issue. This is an events issue, but it even applies to vegan events. Like, it's not a secret. Again, they don't post it because why would another vegan event post, like, again, just to let you know, guys, this venue hosts all these events. It's like, it's just going to cause people to be like, oh, then I don't want to go. Or it's going to cause people to say, great, I already knew that. There's nothing controversial about that. So, you know, it's only going to be bad or it's going to be neutral as opposed to like good a lot of times, which is a shame. But I said in that statement that this applies to other vegan events. Like, all vegan events that aren't just held in someone's backyard or at a sanctuary or a small little piece of land they've been able to find. Like, you know, major vegan events are all held at venues that profit, advertise, or fund the exploitation of animals. And I know that probably better than anyone else in the country, because even these other venues didn't go to the kind of lengths we went to find venues. And I'm not saying they should have. It was just they found a venue within that city. You know, if it's Birmingham Vegan Festival, okay, we're going to go and host it at the main venue that hosts indoor events. They probably went to a few for a few different quotes, but it wasn't so high on the agenda for what they host, because honestly, they all host rib events, farmers markets, horses, like, you know, so
absolutely.
And again, they haven't had the backlash, and it's only once you've had the backlash you then put a lot more effort into these things. So that's why I wanted to make that super clear in the statement. But I was just going to say, all I saw after that statement, yes, the 50 or 100 so people who their jobs, their lives at this point had basically become to attack Camp Out and attack me. Yes, they still carried on. They carried on less, actually, like it really died down after that statement. But from our audience, it literally went from hundreds of people posting about it and a load of people on the fence to, like, the comments are still up. And the only comments I hid on that post were the very people who were awful people, which we all agree with. They're the only comments I hid. All the rest are still there. And almost every single comment on that post, and there's a lot, there's like 500 plus, says like, oh my God, thank you for explaining this so clearly. Either I got it totally wrong and now I'm ashamed to be someone that was joining in, or I'd seen this kind of stuff, didn't really know what it was about, wanted a bit more clarity, and you've done a great job at explaining that. So obviously, like, you know, it's a shame that you kind of saw it as like the way you saw it, but again, like that's your take, and that's absolutely fine. But just based on kind of the before and the after that I saw, I think it actually did a really, really good job in a shorter version of what we've discussed.
Oh, I have to say, by the way, I thought it was a great, extremely well written statement. I just thought it could have come out a week earlier, and it would have shut up a lot of the things that I've been reading in groups like UK Vegan, Vegan UK, like some of the really big groups with the 100,000 members and so on. And that's where I started to read all this controversy about the venues, and then someone shared your post, and my only thing about it was, this should have come out a week ago.
Yeah, well, I meant like the no comment. But even on when we posted it, I think like it wasn't so much a thought process as having at the time. It's more just when something tips a certain point. Like, trust me, if businesses were putting out a statement not the second even, but at the time something starts to gain a bit of traction, they'd be putting out statements all the time. Like, that has to kind of be, and I don't know necessarily where that line is, but it kind of needs to hit a certain point before you come. Like, because we did actually put out a statement. We put out a written statement. It's still on our Facebook. You'll see it. We did a design statement, but we actually put out a much briefer statement about 3 days before. So we kind of waited 4 days really to kind of see where it was going, because these things often die down. Like, the amount of things that have piped up about Vegan Camp Out, they start to get a bit of attraction, they start to be posted in groups, but either they just disappear, or there's enough people that kind of like debunk what they're saying, if you know what I mean. Like, not even supporters, people who just care about logic, or they care about consistency or common sense. You know, they're there to defend us, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, on to the next thing type thing, you know. So we kind of just needed to see where it was going, but it became a big thing. And obviously, I don't know how long we have, but just to spend 2 minutes on why it became a big thing. And this ties back to why you should look into things before you just aimlessly share them. Who posted it? What are their intentions? What is the truth of what they're saying? And by me sharing it, am I aware of the consequences on both sides that this could cause? So the only reason it became a big thing, it wasn't oh, like, yes, it became, oh, a load of people are now really angry. But that's why you don't always say the negatives about things, because if you concentrate on them, all that's going to do is make people angry, right? And you've got to concentrate on the benefits and believe in yourself that you've made the right decisions. But it became to be that a lot of people were angry. But it wasn't that a lot of people were angry, and this is why this happened. We announced a venue back in November. Again, 96% positivity. There was many people that commented saying, you do realize Stanford Hall has hosted or held at their site fox hunting or shoots before, right? We would reply to all of them comments saying, yes, we know this, everything we've just said, but a shorter little tiny paragraph. And other people saw them comments. But this is the thing, and this is how these things work. When most people are on one side, then people that have a different opinion, other people are like, oh, go away, type thing. Stop attacking Vegan Camp Out. It's not their fault that these things are held. Do you go to cinemas? Do you go to non-vegan restaurants? Blah, blah, blah. And so they were drowned out, if you like. And so it wasn't like no one was saying anything. There was probably 15 or 20 people that were commenting on our posts, but they were so drowned out by the positivity, but also by people defending us, that we didn't need to come out with a statement. So, but this is how cancel culture works. If they can get enough people angry about a certain issue, it makes it seem like it's a really big issue. But no, they've just been really good at convincing people to unite together against someone, right? So, we didn't hide. It's not like we never once said, and again, people that made so many lies about us claimed, oh, when they announced their venue, they promised everyone that they'd found a fully ethical venue. And I said to this person on the phone, please show me where I said anything even slightly like that. All I said is we're at a new venue, really happy to be there. These are the dates. I might have said we went to a load of venues and this ended up being the best one. We didn't mention anything about it being an ethical venue because this person was trying to make out that we misled people. But anyway, so it all kind of went very, very quiet. But then, I don't know if you guys know who the Countryside Alliance are. They're basically a big organization they're like the biggest organization for fox hunting and blood sports, basically, in the UK. They've always disliked us. They've always posted about us. They've always seen our event as a threat. They've always had great links with the Telegraph, and they can get the Telegraph to basically publish anything they want.
Right.
Because there was already the group of people who are unhappy with Vegan Camp Out can only ever grow because we grow. Do you know what I mean? So again, the averages of numbers, it's going to get bigger. And so with the right people involved at the right time, with enough push and effort behind it, when the Telegraph did that article this year of Countryside Alliance says Vegan Camp Out is hypocritical for being at a venue that has hosted hunts and shoots, I didn't really think that much of it, to be honest, because they do this every year. We gave our response. It was a good response. Our sponsors gave their response and the venue gave their response. But I did know that in the hands of the right people who really hate us, this could become a really big thing. Again, we didn't hide from that article. It was very public. Loads of people shared it. But then one individual person who basically started all of this then got as many people together as they could. And that's what became what you saw. Without that, a few people would have shared this Telegraph article in groups, but people mostly would have said, okay, well, this happens every year. There's not really that much difference this year. Or they would have said the things that we've said, but there is no vegan venue and blah, blah, blah. But the hatred of the people that made sure that it was on the newsfeed of every vegan in the country. So then it had to become what side are you on? It was never that case before, because it was just, we announced the venue. Obviously, the people that don't like us, they continue to not like us. There's all the people that don't know about us. And then there's all the people that support us. But a very few select individuals made sure this is an opportunity now to try and take down Vegan Camp Out. The Telegraph have posted about it. We're going to make sure this is posted into every group, every, Facebook status, and they were having hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shares. So it was only really the fact that it went viral and it only went viral because a small group of people made sure that it did, that it became such a big issue. It wasn't that like, oh my God, this is the craziest debate of the year, or like the most complex thing, or worse, that Vegan Camp Out fucked up just so majorly here. How could they do this? That's what it became to people, but it was only because people made sure it was that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make such interesting points, Jordan, in terms of just picking up on kind of what you'd said about like having to kind of almost choose a side. Like, we are incredibly lucky on our channel that the community that's grown up around us has kind of taken on and was already pre-existing very much fair in their approach to everything, really. Fair and relatively gentle for the most part. So numerous questions asked of us by our subscribers, even though it was asked in very nice ways, very gentle ways, not attacking Vegan Camp Out at all. Just, hey guys, what do you think of what's going on with Vegan Camp Out? Are you going this year? The amount of people that asked us, it kind of put us in a position where we were like, oh, we kind of feel like we have to choose now.
Yeah, well, it's very important for us to know that the only reason we didn't go to Vegan Camp Out this year was nothing to do with the venues or controversy or anything. It was quite simply that the Vegan Queen's bookings this Pride season have gone through the roof. And from July, and well, we're still working now. We've got 1 weekend off. We're back at it again next weekend.
3 months.
Yeah, it's been 3 months of solid work. And so one of those days of work was while Vegan Camp Out was on, unfortunately.
That's fine.
I think we would have been there this year.
Yeah, just drawing another very quick parallel, and this has been an awesome chat, and quite frankly, I don't mind however long it goes on for, Jordan, to be perfectly honest, because I've really genuinely enjoyed listening to everything that you've had to say. But just to draw one other quick parallel, because I really have picked up on the word that you've used numerous times, and rightly so, and that is the word attack.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, we've said it many times over the years in lots of our vlogs, that the vegan community is just a microcosm of big communities out there around the world. We have the infighting, and you're absolutely right.
We get attacked.
There is that small percentage of people who very nastily and with no thought or humanity to what somebody else is going through or what they're thinking will be absolutely vicious. Yeah. And we've both worked in health and in mental health for many years, and a lot of the time we really genuinely struggle to wrap our heads around why somebody within the community would be so cold and callous. And I'm glad that you've highlighted it, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
Well, I can offer something there. I think some people that cannot afford to go, wouldn't feel comfortable going because of confidence. Those things can easily turn into anger.
Yeah.
That's probably a microcosm of the 1% of the 10% you were talking about before. And some people are just hateful fuckers.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I hate.
And there's also jealousy as well, and I don't mean this in a like, oh, people have something to be jealous of me by. It's like some of the people we looked into that were doing this, and again, it really is 1 or 2 people. Like, that's the kind of numbers we're talking of, right. The people who really started this and made sure that this happened, and continue and to try now and have a load of plans that, you know, we get to find out all of this stuff from people who are in their groups. So we know about this stuff, but like, these people are very, very closely connected to reasons that are extremely jealous of Vegan Camp Out, and so there's no escaping the very obvious jealousy that these people have from our event, and they don't really even shy away from it. They say in their comments, along with their attacks, along with their untrue statements, along with their inconsistent statements, they say the fact that all these people are going to that event and paying this money, and they're not going to this event and that event. Like, you see where this boils down to, and on a human level, I can see that. But jealousy is, it's a really awful emotion to have if used in a bad way, because you can, for me, I'm really inspired by other people's success. I see people doing well, and I'm like, wow, that inspires me. I look up to a lot of people. I have a lot of not like heroes, although I do have heroes in my life, but it's inspiration more than anything, and people that have changed my life. Whereas other people can look at that and think, well, why don't I have that? And not even and worse than that, if I can't have that, I'm going to let everyone know that it's unfair that they have that, and actively try and turn people against them. Again, there's so many, varying degrees to which people can take this, but mental health is a big part of that. And these people that have been attacking us so viciously, it's hardly a surprise that their other posts are about how much they're suffering as people. And whilst that's not to be mocked or to be like even justified, because that doesn't justify the kind of things they do, it is again, that's the importance of the who part. Who is posting this? Who is sharing this? Because if these people are unhappy people themselves who are really struggling, and then they're attacking other people who are clearly trying to do their best, or people that are successful, well, it's quite clear the origin of where that comes from, as opposed to, because again, if you don't have that extreme jealousy or that extreme mental health problem, it's way more probable that you're going to approach it in a different way. If you guys did something that I so disagreed with, even if it was like so bad, it just wouldn't enter my mind to want to in any way turn people against you. If it bothered me that much, I would message you. And I don't mean that's what you did by speaking about it. If I had a YouTube, I might be like, what do other people think about this issue? But I'm on about an attack and a best way to go.
Yeah, direct attack.
Yeah. If that was the case, I would message you. Again, like I've already said, I'm still that person that even if everything you said I disagreed with, I'm not the kind of person that would think that it's justified. Because again, you can't actually equate for the consequences that might happen from that. If I do a post, even if it's not that bad, but I'm really unhappy with those vegan guys based on this, and this. If that goes viral and that ruins your careers, or worse, you do something really bad because of that, I could never live with myself based on that thing. So communication is always so key. And again, I think it's really telling that anyone I reached out to try and talk about these issues, communication is not something they were interested in. You will be instantly blocked. You will be told to fuck off. You will be told you're a piece of scum. So it's very clear to me that they don't care about communication. They don't care about resolution. They just care that they can make themselves feel better by turning people against you. And that's such a negative thing that I've never had that thing within me. But some people have it a lot in them. And then when they get a bit of a voice on Facebook, because they've now got 3,000 vegan friends, and because vegan camp out's so spoken about in the vegan community, the two go together. And it can be a recipe for disaster. And, it's a good job I can be strong with this type of stuff, because people tell me all the time, what you've gone through for 6 years now, I couldn't do that. I couldn't go through that with the probably thousands of people at this point, maybe 1,000, everyone added together. But it's hard. But it doesn't have to be this way. That's why I keep saying this. It's not just this is how the world is. It is, but it's also the world that 98% of this country are non-vegan, but we're trying to change that, right? And so along with veganism, I'm really trying to use my voice now, especially because of what I've gone through. But even forgetting that, to teach people the importance, like I say, of just thinking before you speak, and the actions that you do can have such big consequences. Message people, talk about things. Not everything has to be public. And this idea now that people's private messages to you can just be screenshot all over Facebook,
oh no, see, I don't agree with that.
Crime. Do you know what I mean? We now have a crime that people's personal photos can't be posted publicly online, which is of course a good law. But there's no crime about screenshotting people's private messages. There's no crime about accusing people of the worst accusations that can possibly happen. It's only a civil matter, and that needs to change. But obviously that's a law thing. But we all have a decision to speak out against this kind of stuff, and more importantly, make sure that we're not part of that problem. Which, like I keep saying, I know you guys aren't. I know your fans aren't. I've seen the kind of people that watch your videos and the comments. It's I'm not throwing you guys in any of this.
They're a good crew.
Well, you know what? I was going to just pick up on that and just to kind of say it, like it kind of makes me feel. This might be a little bit eye-rolly for some people who are going to watch this, but I'm going to say it anyway. It makes me feel a little bit better about things because, again, Paul's the interviewer. Paul's done this kind of stuff on TV. I'm kind of just sitting here enjoying the experience and really listening intently, like I said, to what you're saying, Jordan.
Interacted lots.
Well, my point I was going to make was that we've followed through in doing this today in the same way that we encourage our subscribers. So even though we deal with a minuscule amount of what you've talked about, when people attack us through what we do, for whatever reason, we kind of often say, they really don't know us, do they? They really haven't taken the time to get to know us. Yeah. And we leave it at that, and that's it. And one of the things that we've been able to do today is to sit down and talk to you intelligently, fairly, give you a platform and time to discuss things and get stuff off your chest. And I certainly, and I know you do as well, we feel like we've got to know you, and that's what this is all about. And you're absolutely right. We want to tackle this culture that exists.
I mean, it happens everywhere.
Yeah,
like we've started. Actually, me and Stuart, who are the Vegan Queens, did start doing some drag queen story time, and some of the things that were written on Facebook very recently that we've had to report to the police has made us pull away and say we're not doing drag queen story time anymore. We'll stick to adult cabaret, because some of the things that have been said have been horrendous and illegal.
Yeah,
haven't they?
I think I saw you share something about that, or saw something to do with it. Yeah.
There's hurt people. I've always thought the same thing, and I'm a big believer in the. You heard the Native American story about the wolf you feed?
No, only the boy who cried wolf.
It's very short, I'll tell you, because it's something I try to implement in myself all the time. There's a Native American granddad and grandchild sat around the fire, and the grandfather is telling the grandchild about two wolves that live inside all of us. And one of the wolves is bitter and angry and competitive and nasty and vicious. And one of them is good and kind and compassionate and thoughtful. And they are constantly battling each other. And the grandson says to the grandfather, which one wins? And the grandfather says, the one you feed.
Yeah.
I love that. I just got tingles from my toes right to the top of my head. I think it's one of the most beautiful Native American parables. Yeah. Parables, is that the right word? Ever. And I endeavour to feed my good wolf as much as I can. So I retract, Jordan, my statement that your statement was a no. I now get why you said it when you said it. And I get a lot more about you. And I have to say, dude, I've got a huge amount of admiration for the work you've put into this, for the shit you've taken throughout the process, and for the strength that you show now continuing to do this. And all I can say is I hope Vegan Camp Out goes on for years to come. How many years have you got at this new venue now?
At least next year.
At least next year, cool.
Yeah, obviously, like things are always changing, and we're always looking at other venues and also making just decisions about how much we want to grow, or if we want to continue to grow, because every level comes with different consequences. Obviously now there's conversations about starting in other countries, so yeah, it's not as simple as we're going to be here for like this amount of time. There's a whole range of things that can happen. But yeah, obviously, like this whole talk makes it seem like it's all negative. But honestly, like my views on this type of stuff are much more about what's happening on a wider scale actually than what's happened to me. Like, yes, I've experienced it, and yes, I've actually experienced it quite a lot, and that certainly helped me to form my opinions. But all of these things I speak about are more to do with how people can act in scenarios like this, as opposed to they shouldn't have said that about us and they shouldn't have said that about us. Like, this is just a symptom of what really is the problem. And so like that's what I care about the most. But aside from that, like, I still see Vegan Camp Out as a massively more, even just to myself on a personal level, whilst it's had these challenges, I still see it as way more of a benefit than a negative. And to people that come, a lot of the time they don't even hear about these things. I think this year, because of like the kind of reasons I've spoken about, I think a few more people that usually wouldn't get to hear about the backlash or some of more like the politics to do with stuff, I think a few more heard this year. But still, by and large, it's still that people buy a ticket, they come, they have a great time, and they don't get involved in all of these kind of negative things. So I always have to remind myself to, like, because again, you do feed these people by speaking about it in such length. But like I say, I don't want to
important.
Yeah, it is important
to speak about it.
But I want to speak about it in a way that's not like, oh, I'm such a victim here. It's like, it's like what we can do as a community to stop things like this happening to other people.
I don't think you sounded like a victim at any point throughout this conversation. I think you've been very eloquent and intelligent and spoken about things with the giving them the ability to kind of pass lessons on to people rather than woe is me. You know what I mean? We can all take a look at ourselves, can't we? At any point, we can all stop and think, how I'm reacting to this, how is that affecting other people? What I'm saying about this, how is that affecting other people? You know, we can all do that, and I think it's important that we do.
Not that it's an excuse or a get-out clause for people either, as well. But we've observed many times over the years that human beings, for some reason, and I'll include myself in this sometimes, we do communicate differently in the written form sometimes than we do verbally, like we are doing right now, just chatting. I do think that if some people, the attackers, you know, or the ones that are sort of linked to the attackers sort of partially in some way, shape or form, if they paused for thought now and again and just thought, hang on a minute, would I verbalize this in a conversation in the same way that I've just written it in a chat box or in a comment thread? Would I actually verbalize this? I probably wouldn't say it.
It's so true. We've seen some of these people in person, and they've either said nothing, or they've looked down at their feet as we've walked past, or you've seen them just kind of whisper to their friend. So that's so true, that people don't conduct themselves in the same way as they do online, and that's the issue of being behind a computer, having an icon as what represents you, and having words that are going to be there forever unless you go through and like delete them all, which people don't, you know. And you know, maybe they should, but it's so different to what you would say to people in person. And I always try and remind myself that too when I'm commenting to something. It's like I do need to be okay with being able to say this in person, as opposed to like I get away with saying this because there's nothing you can do.
Because like you said, I think you alluded to it before, Jordan, you're absolutely right. Because you know what, whether the people are aware of it consciously or subconsciously, whatever is written, whatever nastiness or attack happens, they have to carry that with them. Through their life.
If you put it out there, you either deal with the fact that it's out there now and it's got your name to it, or you get rid of it. You know. I would like to start bringing this to a close now, only because we've chatted for an hour and a half, Jordan, but it's been absolutely fantastic to chat to you face to face, kind of, and to learn so much more about the journey of Vegan Camp Out. So let's end on a positive. Tell us some fantastic things about VCO 2023.
Well, I mean, what I was going to say to kind of end that is like focusing on the positives, which is still so outweigh the negatives, is back to just how well this year went. Like I said at the start, like to be able to pull off this year with everything, like the events industry really is still a mess. Like so many festivals and cancelled this year due to cost, due to low ticket sales. So the fact we were able to do it is like I'm just so happy. But the fact that so many people said, honestly, despite, because there was still a few issues, like you might have heard, like the water went off for a bit at one point, which was scary because of how hot it was, right? Like I can understand why people got a little bit scared for a bit, but you know, we sorted it out. But everyone was coming up to me at the festival saying after, like, despite all the issues with, you know, the venue backlash stuff and, you know, the little things that went wrong, like the water going off at times, honestly, this year has been the best one I've ever been to. And I wasn't expecting that. Like I really wasn't. And so my vision for being like at a proper festival site and that feeling like a proper festival and what I'd always been to and wanted to create was such a like a compliment that I wasn't expecting, if you know what I mean. Like, so the fact that people felt that way is amazing. And obviously we're just going to continue to build on that for next year. At this stage, there's not necessarily all that much that we're thinking about on like, oh, next year is going to be so different. So it's kind of already the stuff of what was this year, which is, the new venue. Everyone loved it. Definitely from an aesthetics point, which had a lake, which, you know, this year's weekend was obviously just such a hot weekend that it ended up being, you know, a really, really good addition. We'd already obviously extended the festival by a day, which again was amazing, that everyone could arrive on the Friday, relax, chill, unwind, get some food, have a few drinks, meet their friends before anything started on the Saturday. So obviously all of that is going to continue into next year. Obviously, we already have Ramesh Ranganathan confirmed for next year. I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you are then a fan of his, so that's amazing. Yeah. That's probably going to be the biggest kind of like highlight about next year. Obviously, I'm very, very busy right now confirming all of the names for next year and having a think about that, certainly for the main stage, because that's kind of the area that I'm in control of. But yeah, like just to speak on Ramesh, like every year, basically, we put out a poll of who people want to see at Vegan Camp Out. Number one for the last 3 years has always been Joaquin Phoenix, which obviously would be like a dream. Number two had always been Ramesh, and then number three had been Russell Brand. So when we got Russell Brand last year, that was like amazing, and I'm a huge fan of his. But the fact we've been able to get someone that at least our audience seem to want even more than Russell Brand.
You know what that means, don't you? If you started by getting the number 3 spot, and now number 2, 2024, Joaquin, honey, are you watching?
Exactly. Yeah, that's obviously the dream. But yeah, so to finally have Ramesh for next year, because we have tried to get him for like the last 3 years, is going to be amazing. But yeah, other than that, like, you know, we're going to have more people next year. There's certainly a lot from this year that we will learn from and make even better for next year, different areas or things being placed in different areas. But yeah, you know, it's going to be kind of like an improvement on this year's event as opposed to a completely, you know, new format or some really big surprises. Like I say, the biggest one is having Ramesh involved, and we will be announcing our full lineup in October. So obviously your viewers will get to see who we're going to have at the event next year. But obviously that's only one part of the event. I know, Paul, I wrote down in like some of my things from a video you spoke about when you said like you felt like it was like kind of like too heavy on celebrities and stuff. Whereas again, in my opinion, so like the lineup is one element of Vegan Camp Out, right? Like let's say there's 4 elements. Like there's the camping and the sociability aspect. There's the music, there's the food, and then there's the lineup. So the lineup's only really kind of like 25% of the event. But even within the lineup, you know, there's such a wide array of people, whether they're activists or influencers or actors or actresses or comedians or, you know, performers, doctors. So, you know, it is pretty varied. But obviously you need them big names to the costs associated with putting on festivals honestly is astronomical, and it's only rising each year, not with like normal natural levels, but like honestly, like festival costs for this year have been about double what they were last year, like if not more. So that's why it's been really, really difficult. But that's also why you need these big names to attract a lot of people. Like, yes, you need like the unsigned up and coming things as well. And I know you spoke about that. So I was going to say, like, our music stage, for example, we are one of the only festivals, like, except from like the two big music headliners each night, the whole of the music stage is unsigned up and coming acts that we pick who we want to play. Obviously people submit their applications. I know you guys obviously would love to be there, and I'm sure we would definitely make it work, if not next year, at some point. So we do listen and we do take on board everything. There's so much that goes into kind of having certain things, and especially when it's not like simply music and it falls into another category, it's okay, well then if that's going to be a main stage slot, we need to hit a certain number of like level of certain names to justify a ticket price, or to try and hit this number so we can pay our costs. Like there's so much that goes into it. It's never like, unless we really don't like someone, then we might be like, yeah, we don't want them at our festival. But except from that, which rarely happens, there's so much that goes into like curating a lineup, and so whilst we want to make sure we've got up and coming and unsigned acts, the big names are who pull in the most amount of people, and when you get into like the level of like the cost we're at, we need them. But I still think it's really diverse. Like this year, yes, we had some big influencers, but we had Vanna Lynch, who obviously is a very famous actress from Harry Potter. We had JME and Maccabee play. We had Simon Amstel and Preacher Lawson for comedy. So I think we're getting to a really good level of having a really big variation, and we're certainly going to try and make sure that that's the case next year as well.
I think that's a really good, I think that's a really good way to kind of, carve Vegan Camp Out up into quarters, and do it that way. Certainly.
And I do have to jump in there and say that you have to understand, me moaning about mainly big names is kind of anger and jealousy that 2 years ago I contacted Vegan Camp Out and said, please consider booking the Vegan Queens. We're a vegan drag duo and blah blah blah. And I started having a conversation with somebody, and then it just died, fizzled. The conversation. And so I was like, come on, see, because if we're booked by Vegan Camp Out, I can be there and not lose any bookings because I've got one. Do you get me?
I assure you, we will certainly make it. We will certainly make it work, and it's in a bigger sense of that. It's like it's really important for people to know. I think, like I speak about this, like I have to go after opportunities so much. Like the reason Vegan Camp Out is where it is purely down to the opportunities I've taken, which are thousands at this point. And so, like, even though obviously you're joking around and blah blah blah, but like it is back to that, how you use your kind of I want to make clear it's not rejection, but you might have seen it as rejection. So that's why I'm saying rejection.
I didn't even see it as rejection. I just thought the conversation fizzled out, and I was like, pay attention to me. I'm a drag queen.
Exactly. But I think that like you have to kind of then be inspired by that to be like, okay, right, I'm going to carry on. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to believe in it. I'm going to keep doing what I do. And then eventually I think people will start to, obviously that already happens with you guys, you get loads of bookings, but I mean in general with other people, like concentrate really hard on something, and eventually people will understand why you're doing that thing. Do you know what I mean? Because once you start to be bitter, or even worse, then be like, post something like, all right, blah blah blah, they're not having me, not only is that like obviously kind of comes across as, I don't know, unprofessional like to other people, but even for your own kind of like mindset, then you get in a like I don't know, I think that can then what's the opposite of like it can stop you in your tracks of like working really hard. Do you know what I mean? Because then it's like, oh, I'm never going to get anywhere and people don't listen to me. But like never take that as a bad thing. Like just take it to work really harder on something, and that's what I do with Vegan Camp Out. And that's why it is a shame, because we would love to give everyone a slot at Vegan Camp Out. You know, we get so many thousands of applications, but you know, and if you want to be at Vegan Camp Out, you know, our emails are on our website, but please understand it's nothing, not to you, I mean to other people, like understand it's nothing personal if you're not there. There's so many people we'd love to have, and obviously we have a list of people that we want to have even more, and within that list, even that is so big, and we only have so many slots per year. But yeah, eventually, you know, like I say, if it doesn't happen next year and it happens the year after, we would love to get you guys at the event. There's just always a lot to think about. But I didn't know all that much about you until like my mum watches your videos, so I knew about.
Oh, does she?
God bless.
That's why I knew about you guys. And
What's
then
she called?
Jane, her name is. But
So
I
she'll
don't.
probably watch this, won't she?
Yeah, she'll definitely watch this.
Hi, Jen. Thanks for watching our vlogs.
Did you say Jen or Jane?
Jane.
Jane.
Yeah,
Jane.
yeah. But then, yeah, like obviously, when I messaged one of you after, like, yeah, I'd seen a few clips of your videos, I was like, well, I want to go on. I want to chat with them because they seem like really lovely people. I want to kind of, you know, say my reasons for why things happened, speak about any confusions or disagreements that we have. And yeah, it's been really, really good to actually get to speak to you. And like I said, you're more than welcome to come next year. I know you've said you're already going to try and be there. And yeah, it'll be great for you to check out the new venue, especially that it'll be 4 years by that point since you last came. So
yeah, it will indeed.
Definitely, Jordan.
I cannot see us not being there in 2023. So
well, again, no hard feelings if you know if you can't be there. It's how these things are. But the fact you're going to try and be there, yeah, is amazing.
What's more important, to be honest, I think at this stage in the here and now, is that we have set a precedent in terms of I feel what we should all do as human beings if we don't necessarily understand each other or we don't always see eye to eye. This is what we do. This is what we need to do, and more of it.
Unfortunately, it's just one of them things where the people that probably watch your videos are the people that already know that message. But all we can do is make these videos and hope that it changes a few people's minds.
Some people will come across this video who don't usually watch our videos because they'll be interested in your opinion on Vegan Camp Out. And I think, like I said, this has been a great chat. So we'll say our usual goodbye. We'll pass over to you in a sec, Jordan, but don't leave yet, please. Thank you so much for watching. We really enjoyed chatting to Jordan today, and we hope you've enjoyed watching. We will see you again very soon. And until then, please be excellent to yourselves and each other. And now you can say goodbye, Mr. Jordan.
Okay. Yeah, goodbye. If people want to find out obviously more about Vegan Camp Out next year, go to vegancampout.co.uk or the link.
We'll put a link down below.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, thanks again for having me on. It's been really good to actually get to speak to you guys. So.
And now let's all be really cheesy and say bye together, but still don't leave. I'll just stop it recording while we say bye, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.